and welcome to Ambleside News. Today we have a very special segment on bringing adventure from rural areas to urban environments. First we'll have Holly talking to us about urban environments in Edinburgh, then we'll have Patrick talking to us about psychogeography. After that we'll have Lucy and Ben reporting to us live from Edinburgh on the subject of urban climbing. Finally we'll have Erin, our legal correspondent, talking to us about the legality of all of this urban climbing. Now over to Holly in Edinburgh.
When you hear the term urban, you probably think of tower blocks and housing estates and not somewhere like this. But guess what? This is an urban environment. But what does that mean? Well, in 2017 it was surveyed that over 3/4 of the UK was either farm or natural land, meaning they were either a field full of sheep or a mountain moor. While an urban environment is any well-developed area, meaning the density of man-made features such as roads, cars, houses, benches and parks. So even though I'm surrounded by trees and greenery, traditionally rural characteristics, these paths, benches and fountains make it an urban area. But what separates the meanings of urban and rural? With the development of green spaces in cities and the buildings of roads and walls through traditionally rural areas, where do we draw the line?
Thanks Holly, that's some really interesting information there. Now we go over to Patrick in Belfast, who's going to talk to us about the psychogeography and how it can be used for youth work.
Thanks Jack. So you must be wondering where the term psychogeography comes from. Originally coined by French Marxist Guy Debord in 1955 as a means of exploring different urban scapes and examining the effects of different environments on the feelings and behaviours of individuals. A rise in population in urban areas, especially in large cities, means that there is now a need for the urban youth of today to be engaged with adventure activities which allow them to grow and learn in safe environments. Psychogeography within urban youth work and adventure programmes can help to create self-confidence and increase personal growth by exploring local areas while also learning map reading and compass skills. Psychogeography also provides a means of connecting with one's surroundings, local community, culture and history. Psychogeography holds the key to many urban scapes and their uses. City Adventures by Dave Roos provides an array of activities, all of which can be used in conjunction with psychogeography in a youth work setting. These include games such as city backpacking, dodging cracks in pavements and street history, which can be helpful in today's case study, Belfast. There's no shortage of history and culture within the streets and walls of Belfast, though when travelling through Belfast city centre there is little evidence of the city's rich culture and troubled past. In the last 2 decades, the city centre of Belfast has been transformed into a modern metropolis filled with wide open streets and big branded stores, which to some almost feels like an attempt to leave behind centuries of culture and history. I spoke to members of the public who frequent the streets of Belfast about their experiences, and they relayed positive views about areas and streets within the city centre. Many conveyed feelings of safety and security without feeling conscious of those around them. What people noticed most within the city centre is wide open shopping spaces and the general cleanliness of the area. Although stepping away from the city centre, however, and you'll be met with murals and memorials depicting Belfast's history and culture, almost all of which relates to the 20th century. History such as Titanic and the Troubles. Between the Falls Road and Shankill Road area lies a 20-foot wall of steel and concrete, previously used to divide two communities, which now stands covered in murals and messages of peace and hope for the future. However, when speaking to people about experiences in different areas outside of Belfast city centre, many express feelings of anxiety and feeling at risk. People seem to notice and associate these feelings with painted colours of lampposts, curbstones and the different murals which mark out tribe-like territories associated with the different communities within Belfast. Belfast city centre feels similar to any European city, though by travelling through its back streets, the secrets which are hidden away from the city centre come to light. By using psychogeography as a means of urban exploration, one can fully immerse themselves in a world hidden away from plain sight.
So, in conclusion, taking part in psychogeography requires little equipment and experience. Robert McFarlane explains, in its simplest form, psychogeography can be as easy as tracing a circle on a map and walking said circle as closely as possible, while taking some time to document your feelings in certain areas, and also taking time to take in your surroundings, such as buildings, murals and graffiti. This makes it an accessible activity to almost anyone, allowing them to tap into local history and culture.
That's all very intriguing, Patrick. Now we go over to Lucy and Ben reporting live in Edinburgh on urban rock climbing. Take it away, you two.
Thanks, Jack. Ben and I are here in Edinburgh underneath the Gatlin Bridge. This is where our good friend Robbie Phillips has created a graded urban crack climb.
Rock climbing began in rural areas. Climbers would travel to places like Snowdonia in the Lake District and climb interesting crags and multi-pitch routes. However, urban climbing is becoming increasingly more popular, especially here in Edinburgh. What is urban climbing, Ben? This sport, Jack, involves indoor and outdoor climbing walls and centres. It also involves climbing of buildings in small towns and cities. This kind of climbing is mostly done by free climbing, which means that no equipment is used. However, some climbers do prefer to use some sort of equipment just to provide that little bit more safety. Did Robbie Phillips use any equipment for this urban crack climb, Lucy?
He does actually, Jack, at first. He uses these things called hexes and cams. He uses them by jamming them into the crack as he's going along the route. Recently, in February, he came back for a second ascent, but this time without any equipment. This is called free soloing. Ben and I decided that we should do an interview with him to see why he came back, and also, is he going to do any more urban climbing?
Here's the recording. So we saw you do the crack climb under the bridge. Like, how did you discover that climb?
I was literally just walking from my girlfriend's flat. I had my van parked up on the road just adjacent to the canal. They went the wrong way to get to the van, so I ended up having to walk along the side of the canal. And then I got to the bridge, and I was under the bridge, and I was like, oh, there's a crack there. I don't have anything to do today, so I just got a message on Instagram, was like, oh, does anyone want to come down and try it with me? And later that night, it was dark and we had head torches. We basically aided along the roof, cleaning off the crack, and then in the morning afterwards I did it clean as a free climb.
I'm just wondering what your sort of thoughts and feelings were before, during and after the crack climb.
Initially I thought it was going to be really easy because I could see the size of the crack, and I thought it would just fit my hands and a hand jam. When I actually started climbing it, I needed rests and the gear was quite tricky to place. And then I realised the crack got wider in the middle and then thinner at the end. And when I realised that, I thought that maybe it would be quite hard for me to do.
Talking about urban climbing as a whole, do you personally think urban climbing is a frequent thing? Do you think lots of people are getting into it more recently?
It's been happening for decades.
Yeah.
It's nothing new. Climbing's in this peak of popularity, and people are really getting into indoor climbing, especially people who live in the city who don't have rock on their doorstep. They're going to be looking for alternatives to have an urban adventure, and this sort of stuff is a potential outlet for them. I was already quite psyched to talk to the council about the bridge and everything, and then a few people were like, oh, you might be opening yourself up to some issues if you go mentioning this stuff to city council. They'll probably cement over the crack or something to stop people climbing it. I was like, that's kind of a good point.
We were just wondering if you were involved in any sort of urban climbing youth work yourself.
Just really through Urban Uprising. We're not taking the kids climbing on buildings. One pretty cool project that TCA Glasgow were involved in is the Cunningar Loop boulders. They're concrete boulders that were built quite a deprived area, try and encourage the youths to get into climbing. They literally manufactured outdoor boulders. Those sorts of projects I think are really interesting. I've always loved the idea of having climbing in the city, even if it was manufactured for purpose. Some of the ways buildings and bridges usually quite flat surfaces. That's the reason why that bridge works so well, because it was two massive bits of concrete that were flat and they came together. That is very reminiscent of sandstone, Li Ming in China, where the sandstone forms splitter cracks which are parallel sided and don't change in size much for the entire length of a pitch.
Okay.
So this isn't the first time I've looked at something and thought I'd climb it, but it's the first time I've looked at something and thought I could get away with it.
Yeah.
Because there's some amazing looking cracks on the National Museum in Edinburgh, but I'd get arrested if I went and climbed those.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see.
Okay, Jack, that's all from us. Back to you in the studio. Wow, that's amazing. Thank you for your time, you two. Now joining me in the studio is Erin, our legal correspondent, here to fill us in on the legality of urban climbing. So I suppose the first question is this legal?
Thanks, Jack. Well, to answer your question, technically no. There is no law that states that someone cannot climb a building. Equipped or not, climbing buildings in urban areas is mostly seen as a civil matter rather than criminal, meaning the police can get involved and ask the climber to come down after a complaint, but the climber in question would not be eligible for prosecution. However, trespassing and an invasion of privacy, if photos or videos are taken, is an offence, and depending on the severity, whether that is damage to the property or uncooperative behaviour, this can lead to prosecution.
So Erin, what you're saying is that it is legal to climb buildings, as long as you have the permission from the appropriate authority?
Yes, Jack, that's absolutely right. If you want to climb a building, then by all means do so, but the appropriate actions must be taken beforehand and the potential risk of injury and death must be acknowledged.
Brilliant, thank you Erin. So we've just found out that urban climbing is technically legal, however permission from the appropriate authority must be given. Thanks for listening, that's been Ambleside News. Have a good day.